enormous whale is flying through the streets of Seoul, but nobody seems to notice, except Woo Young-woo, the star of our show. Young-woo has always been unique. She couldn't say a word when she was 5 years old, when most children can string together complete sentences. Her worried dad takes her to her doctor, who solemnly declares that he needs to do further tests on Young-woo. Clearly, he has a bad opinion on Young-woo's mental capabilities. But when they're going home, an unexpected turn of events happens. Their landlord believes that Young-woo's dad is sleeping with his wife and starts fighting him. Young-woo is clearly distressed by the scene and bursts out with the first words she said in her whole life. A person who inflicts bodily injury upon another shall be punished by up to 7 years of imprisonment, up to 10 years of probation, or a fine of 10 million. Everyone's so shocked that they all stop fighting, and her delighted dad runs off celebrating. He discovers that assault isn't the only law Young was familiar with. His brilliant child has memorized the entire legal code. This cute, innocent child who looks oblivious is actually a genius. Everyone is blown away by this incredible news. In the blink of an eye, Young-woo has grown up. Using her brilliant brain, she's become the first ever lawyer in Korea with autism. Every day, she has to practice her social skills by looking at her dad's emotions on a wall. Aside from her caring dad, the most important thing in Young-woo's life are whales. She'll start telling anyone about them. Her dad's worried because today is her first day at work and she can't mention whales to her colleagues and clients. Eventually, they reach a compromise. Young-woo can just talk to the whales in her head. His advice is useful almost immediately. Young-woo is squeezed in a crowded train as she goes to work, and her claustrophobia kicks in, making her nervous, until she summons her best friend, a giant whale, to accompany her. If I had such a realistic imagination, I'd make myself Jeff Bezos. The troubles on her way to work don't stop there. As she's headed into her office building, she's thrown off by the revolving doors. She either can't get into the doors or can't get out in time. Just as she's ready to give up, a warm voice appears and guides her through the demonic doors. Lee Jun-ho is a colleague at her law firm who's the exact opposite of Young-woo. He's incredibly extroverted and is friends with everyone. With his help, Young-woo finds her boss Jung Myung-seok and her colleague Soo-yeon, a classmate from law school, and Min-woo. Myung-seok hadn't realised that the new attorney had autism and runs off to ask his boss, the CEO Seon-young, what on earth she was thinking. Seon-young points out that he only looked at the fact that Young-woo was autistic, but completely ignored the reality that she scored full marks and came top of the class at law school. Myung-seok still isn't convinced, but they eventually agree to disagree and decide to give Young-woo a chance. If Young-woo can handle the social aspects of a case, talking to clients and going to court, she can stay. If she fails, she'll be fired. Unfortunately, the case doesn't start off well. Young-woo's first ever lawsuit is coincidentally about the landlord and landlady from her childhood. The old man had always been irrationally suspicious of his wife, and with old age, it was only getting worse with some absolutely vile language. The wife was arguing with a senile husband, and in a flash of anger, accidentally hit him with an iron. He's seriously hurt, but luckily, he kept his life. The old lady is originally horrified when she sees that her lawyer is a stuttering, disorganized mess. But when she finds out it's the brilliant little girl she knew from 10 years ago, she's overjoyed. The same can't be said for Myung-seok. Just as the dad feared, when Young-woo sees the photos of the case, it turns into a whale in her head, and she starts spouting random whale facts. He is completely baffled when Young-woo declares that she wants to enter a not guilty plea to attempted murder for the old lady. Their strategy is to plead guilty to the charge. The prosecutors are fully aware of the situation, and if they plead guilty, they'll be let off with a light sentence of probation. If they plead not guilty and lose, she might end up in jail. But when Young-woo explains her reasoning, he's amazed. She points out that the old lady and her husband survive off government pensions, and if she gets convicted of attempted murder, she won't be able to get that money. She can plead guilty to less serious crimes, but attempted murder would destroy her life. Myung-suk is impressed for the first time by her encyclopedic knowledge and sends her off to hospital with Jun-ho to visit the landlord. They're looking for each other in the lobby, but don't realise that the other person is who they're supposed to meet, and end up chatting. Jun-ho teaches Young-woo some techniques for going through a revolving door. It seems like Young-woo is more talkative than normal when she's talking to Jun-ho. After a while, they call each other and awkwardly realise that they're meeting each other. But luckily, the social butterfly Jun-ho quickly recovers and invites Young-woo to go through the doors together using their technique. When they get to the hospital, the landlord immediately starts berating Young-woo because of her father. But very impressively, Young-woo manages to control herself and sits down to talk with the landlady, pointing out that everything she said about wanting to kill her husband was in the heat of the moment, because of how worried she clearly is about her husband. When they get back to the law firm, her colleagues want to appear in court instead of her, worried that her behaviour might be bad for the case. But Young-woo points out that they need the public to support the landlady in this case, and having an autistic lawyer representing her will help. None of her colleagues can figure out how she's sometimes so amazing at being a lawyer and sometimes so bad. That night after work, Soo-yeon sees Young-woo stuck behind the doors again and ends up helping her get out so Young-woo can go meet her eccentric best friend Kdrama and practice public speaking for her trial. Before long, it's time for the trial. Despite her nerves, Young-woo does great, but the prosecutor is super aggressive when questioning the poor landlady, making her upset. The situation is going badly, and Myung-suk comes up with the idea that they should get the landlord to say that he doesn't want to press charges against his wife to get the jury on side. But unfortunately, the senile old man goes on a rampage the minute he sees Young-woo and starts shouting about her father once again. They have to quickly usher him out. Worst of all, he passes away while returning to the hospital. The prosecution officially changes the landlady's charge from attempted murder to murder. Young-woo feels awful about aggravating the landlord by being there. After his funeral, Young-woo keeps working late at night trying to find a solution. Jun-ho even shows up and talks to her about whales to keep her spirits up. With his help, Young-woo finds the solution. She remembers that the landlord had been complaining of headaches for months. What use is this? Well, during the trial, she questions the expert doctor as to what could have caused the landlord's death, which turns out to be a blood clot in his head. Young-woo then reviews the landlord's headaches, which could have been a sign of his blood clot before he was hit by his wife. When combined with the fact that the landlord had no visible external injuries on his head, only his arms, the doctor changes his opinion at the last minute and concludes that the landlord died from a pre-existing blood clot, not the landlady hitting him. With such a critical witness changing his mind, the landlady walks free. But she decides to thank Young-woo in an interesting way, by hugging her, which is something that Young-woo clearly doesn't enjoy, but it amuses everyone watching to no end. That night, Seon-young turns up to Young-woo's family restaurant and greets him like an old friend, shocking him.